so many lives during his lifetime. Memories are precious because no one can take them from us. Death is a very real reminder of the fragility of life. But perhaps this death will help us appreciate each other in a new way and help us appreciate even more the life that we have and so often take for granted. Time's tide may wash Paul's footprints to shore, but not our love for him, nor our memories of him, nor the influence of his life on our own. Luke chapter 6 verse 44 says, "You can tell what a tree is like by the fruit it produces." And verse 45 says, "Good people do good things because of the good in their hearts." When I reflect on the fruit that Paul has produced in his lifetime, like his family and others who have been influenced by his life and his witness, it's not hard to see the fruit that his life has produced and is still producing. The Bible also tells us of a God who cares for his people and who is faithful to his promises. So often we go through life missing the whole point until we come face to face with the situation we have today, until we become face to face with death. You see, life is not just a cycle of birth and death. There is a purpose in it all. There is a God who cares, who revealed himself in Jesus Christ, and who is willing to be part of our lives. Paul knew Jesus as his Saviour and his Lord. His prayer for each one of us would be that we could have the same assurance of God's love, forgiveness and peace that he experienced in his lifetime. I'd like to share a reading that I feel is very appropriate for today. You can shed tears because he is gone, or you can smile because he lives. You can close your eyes and pray that he will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love that you share. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live in yesterday, or you can be happy tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him and only that he is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry, close your mind, be empty, and turn your back. Or you can do what he would want. Smile, open your eyes, and go on. Amen. Can we stand and sing our next song? It is well with my soul.
This was a song that Paul came up after church one day and just said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but someone in his family would sing it with him. So let's sing it with Paul today.
Sorrows
Fiona's now going to give me she was. She didn't want.
Today I feel Will, my husband and best friend. This has been one of the hardest few days of my life, and I thank you all for your prayers and support given during this time and the many years that Paul has been unwell. I am comforted by all who have come here to celebrate his life. He touched many lives. So Paul and his twin sister Susan were born 3rd of November 1948 in Lewisham, London, England, to Douglas and Gladys Wymark. When they were 3, the whole family, including Granny Wymark and Auntie Marge, immigrated to Canada, settling in Ottawa. Doug and Gladys quickly settled the family into first of several homes, found work and built a life in a new country with a lot more snow. Paul and Susan had a typical childhood for the 1950s and 60s, school, friends, freedom and family. Granny Wymark, a staunch Baptist, insisted on the children attending Sunday school regularly, so they did, whichever one was the closest. Paul was a diligent student and worked hard for all his grades. After he finished high school, Paul applied to and was accepted for pilot training, but as it was in the United States and he would have been eligible for the Army draft for Vietnam at that time, he opted to stay in Canada and studied accounting and found work in that field. When he was 23, his father died suddenly. Susan had recently married, so it fell to Paul to help out at home with his mum and, by now, a very elderly grandma. Eventually, life straightened out and he moved to Toronto and a new life. Then, in 1987, he went on a blind date with a Kiwi girl and lost his heart. We were married 1st of October 1988 in Newmarket, Ottawa. In Christmas 1989, we had a belated honeymoon back to New Zealand, and when we returned to Canada, Paul decided to apply for New Zealand residency. We moved back to New Zealand in July 1991, Paul wondering what he had done as we arrived in a Wellington Southerly, and everything was fairly horizontal that day. We quickly settled in, finding work and then buying our home in 1992. It was at this time that Paul began to become unwell and was diagnosed with renal failure a week after we bought our house. Christina was born February 1995 and Paul went on dialysis the following week. He had managed his disease with diet prior to that. Christina was the light of his life. He loved her from the moment she was born and was a great dad. He was very hands-on. Bath time and bedtime were all his. We were both devastated when she was diagnosed with a tumour at 6 months, but happily she's still with us 23 years later. That year, Paul also received the best Christmas present ever, a new kidney. He treated that gift with great care and honoured the sacrifice made for him to receive a second chance at life. Life was relatively normal for several years. Christina started school. We had 3 trips back to Canada to visit family. Paul and Christina continued to be best mates. They would disappear every Saturday morning on their secret adventures. I still don't know what they got up to. But it usually involved a trip to the airport and a playground. And Macca's once a month for breakfast. Yeah. Paul had several different places of work over those years, including VOC Gases, Tip Top Bread and Open Heart Foundation. One of the side effects of immunosuppression drugs is a high risk of cancers, especially lymphomas and skin, and Paul contracted both. Firstly, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in the epiglottis in 2013. It had to be treated aggressively, and this left him with residual health issues. Then in 2014, squamous cell carcinomas appeared on his head. He underwent several high-risk surgeries, which again left him with physical issues, mostly partial right-side paralysis and residual nerve pain from the skin grafts. In the last couple of years, life got hard for Paul. He suffered almost continuously with infections, resulting in many hospital stays. His world got small as he struggled to get about due to the increasing paralysis and continual pain, but thanks to some wonderful folk, he got lots of visitors and rides to places. Thanks to Warwick, Jim and Judy, Sid and Jane, Mary Claire, June, Ewan and Gillian, Derek, Ian, Dave, Bill and anyone else. There were lots. Paul found new ways to feel useful. He was on the prayer chain, he rang folks for the over 60s lunch, and he potted about the house doing chores until even then became too hard. 3 weeks ago, Paul was not well, and eventually he decided he needed to go to ED, as usual at 3 a.m, and was admitted into hospital with yet another infection. He did not respond to treatment this time and was in so much pain, he was put under the care of the palliative care team. He passed away peacefully at 2:35 on Monday, 13th of August, and Christine and I were both present. According to his wishes, a private family committal service was held last Wednesday afternoon. Paul was a gentle man in all senses of the word. He was generous, loving, interested in everyone's lives, celebrating their joys and sharing their sorrows. He was an encourager, as many of you can testify. Paul was a kind and loving husband. We were a true partnership, sharing all decisions. Paul was a great dad. He loved his girl and would spend hours playing with her. He was very good at dressing Barbies. He was deeply interested in travel and airlines and trains and buses and cruise ships and fire engines, all those boy things. He would read timetables and schedules and tell you about any commercial airline in existence. Christina and he would attend the annual travel show and come home with dozens of brochures that would keep them occupied for many days afterwards. No wonder she ended up in the travel industry. Earlier this year, I decided to make a scrapbook for Paul's 70th birthday, which was coming up in November. And so I asked his sister to send me a letter with reminiscences of their early years, and I thought I would read it to you today. Dear Paul, sorry for not actually writing this letter, she typed it, but my handwriting leaves a lot to be desired. At our advanced age, it is hard to differentiate between true memories and those that we think happened, so bear with me if you don't remember these events as I do. The only memories I have of our voyage to Canada are of my throwing up and you throwing a dinky toy over the side into the sea. How did we all fit into that house on Riverside Drive? There was you, me, Dad, Mum, Nan, Auntie Marge and Cousin Doreen. But I do have memories of our early years in Overbrook. We seemed to be outside all the time, mostly playing cowboys and Indians. Although since I was outnumbered in the neighbourhood by boys, you guys got the starring roles and I was usually a dog or a horse. Remember our Davy Crockett coonskin hats? We were so excited we probably wore them to bed. And what about that long walk to school, over railroad tracks, which scared me, and a creek, even when we were in kindergarten. The infamous creek, the one that you and Brian Grimley managed to cross when it was ice-covered, and I didn't. But you stuck with the alibi we concocted to tell Nanny that I'd fallen in a puddle. Of course, she didn't believe it. Can't remember if I got my ears boxed or I got the wooden stick. Paul also got punished because he should have stopped his sister. But I also remember the long streetcar rides out to Britannia Beach, seeming to take all day, to finally ride the little train that was there and be able to walk far into the water because it wasn't deep, but was full of lakeweed, hence the rubber swim shoes. Remember the infamous swimming lessons at Chateau Laurier? I had nightmares about them for a long time, but I did like the summer classes we attended at the Gospel Hall next to our house, mostly because of the crafts we made after learning a Bible story. And those marathon drives to Toronto, it's about 6 hours, nearly every summer before the 401 was built, you and I in the back seats squished either side of Nanny, inhaling all that cigarette smoke coming from the front. Do you remember the restaurant on the highway that we used to stop at, the one that had the bears in the caged area? I recall we had a picture taken of us. Never did find it. Remember when you were bitten by that dog we befriended on the way to school? All those rabies shots. And you were bitten again on our holiday to Massachusetts while you were riding a bike. It's a wonder you still like dogs. You were probably bitten by Coco, that was their poodle, a few times as well. The move to Manor Park was a big one, not only because it was a new school and neighbourhood, but because it was the first time in our lives we were in different classes. I don't know about you, maybe you were glad to get rid of me, but I started biting my nails and had a twitch in one of my eyes. Still, living in Manor Park was great. All those bike parks, lots of freedom. Then came our first trip to England when we were 10. I remember receiving a flight book and wings pins on that trip, and you were able to go up to the cockpit. The airlines really knew how to take care of kids back then. Was that when you started your love of planes, or did you develop that hobby before? So many model airplanes, right? On our second trip, thank goodness you were in charge again. They went to Brussels, but they did go to London and walk down Carnaby Street and felt very cool for a while. Let's just skip over high school. Yeah, no good memories there. Then boom, we were out into the working world. I hated my first job. What about you? But we had money to spend, and then I moved out, a rebel, and we went our separate ways. After that, the world ended, as we knew, when Dad died. You shouldered a lot more of the burden than I did. Then it was your turn to move on to Newmarket, and we have different memories from then on. But the years have flown by, and for better or worse, I miss our family, small as it was. I hope I brought back some memories for you, and you'll have to do the same for me, which of course he never did. Love, Susan. So thank you all for coming today to celebrate Paul's life, and please feel free to share if you have any memories that you'd like to.
Thank you, Fiona. Has any other family got to say something?
Can I? I want to read it.
Yeah, you can read it, yeah. You can. Just stand on that, yes. Talking to what?
Yeah. Don't knock the thing over, though.
Should be bolted down, shouldn't it?
Should be, yes. Well, I'd like to say a few words, and they only are a few, about Paul, and I only hope I can get through it. And my thoughts about the lovely man he was. I first met Paul when I went to Canada for their wedding in 1988. First thing I noticed was that he obviously loved Fiona to bits, to quote Paul. He was a romantic, I think, because he never forgot an anniversary or birthday, and he was always buying Fiona beautiful flowers. This went on when they were in New Zealand, right up until he was sick. As you all know, they moved back to New Zealand after a few years, and that was when I realised Paul was not a Kiwi bloke. The first thing he had to learn was to drive on the left, which wasn't too hard. The second was to learn to drive a manual car, which was a bit harder, and I felt he never really nailed it. Many a time he was taken to the back of Fitzroy and made to drive around there until Fiona felt it was okay to let out among the natives of Porirua. The third clue was as follows. They stayed with me at first in Titai Bay and had a townhouse there with a pot-belly fire which I used to burn manuka on. As you all probably know, manuka is very hard and takes a bit of splitting. I had had a load delivered and was busy splitting it when Paul asked if he could help. I cautioned him that it was a bit hard, but thought I should let him have a go. He took the axe, but not at the end of the handle, and gave the wood a reasonable clout, but of course the axe just bounced off the log. After a couple of tries, I took the axe back and said I was more worried about him than I would finish the task. I started off again, and the first bit that split went flying into his shin, at which Fiona said, "You never stand close to Mum when she's chopping wood." I must admit that Paul did become a Kiwi bloke over the years and was always offering to help me as I got older. And I think that everything else has been said about him, except he was a real gentleman. I knew I wouldn't do it.
Thank you, Connie. Does anyone else like to briefly share a memory of Paul?
afternoon, everyone. My name's Ian. I got to know Paul, the introduction was through Paul's extended family, and I consider that one of the greatest privileges of my life. They come up with the statement, scholar and a gentleman. He was more than that. He's the bravest man I ever met. Why the dog's here is because we decided that not just visiting and chatting in the lounge in this house, we would go on boys' own adventures. And I got to know, obviously, that Paul's love of aeroplanes and trains, and so we decided we would go first of all to Wellington Airport. I don't want to dwell on that too often, because I'll tell you something, trying to get